And welcome back inside the home office. I'm Craig D'Amico, and this is NEC Women's Basketball on the Run. It's the most wonderful time of year in college basketball. March is less than 1 week away, and the road to the 2022 NEC Women's Basketball title is headed towards its final stop. So much to talk about on today's show. We'll go back and relive all the drama of this past weekend, and there was plenty of it. I mean, we're talking Olivia Rodrigo, Sabrina Carpenter type drama. I mean, it was intense. We will update the NEC playoff picture. We'll name our 3 stars of the week, break down all the stats, and look ahead to the penultimate week of action, including our NEC Women's Basketball TV game coming up on Saturday afternoon in Loretto between the Sacred Heart Pioneers and the St. Francis Red Flash. Now, speaking about that game, we'll also be joined by our special guest this week who will be playing in it, Sacred Heart junior guard Sonia Smith. But first, let's get to the Week 8 NEC Women's Basketball headlines. So after a 55-49 win over Merrimack on Thursday, the first place Fairleigh Dickinson Knights took on the Bryant Bulldogs Saturday afternoon at the Stratus Arena on ESPN+. Now, going into Saturday, the scenario was quite simple. The Knights could clinch the regular season title and the #1 seed for just the second time in program history and for the first time in 29 years with a victory and a St. Francis Brooklyn loss to the St. Francis Red Flash. Bryant handed FDU one of only 2 NEC losses on their ledger earlier this year, albeit with both teams not at full strength. This time, though, both teams rolled out their full rosters, and early on, it was FDU using their tenacious defense, deflecting balls, forcing turnovers, diving on the floor for loose balls, and battling on the glass, as well as hitting the 3 ball, going a perfect 6 for 6 from behind the arc in the first half to grab a 40-26 lead at intermission. The 40 points marked FDU's highest scoring first half in conference play all year. But the Bulldogs, they would bark back, trimming the deficit to just 6 points in the final minute with the basketball. But Lucy Castaigne missed a 3 that would have made it a 1-score game. Sierra D'Angelo came up with a rebound, and FDU was able to escape with a 59-52 win, reducing their magic number to have the road to the 2022 NEC Women's Basketball title go through the Garden State, reducing that magic number to just 1 game. Anaya Bell, representing the DMV and the 202, led the team in scoring for the 3rd straight game. She netted 18. The Knights are now 7-0 in conference play on their home court and have won 10 of their last 11 games overall. They have clinched at least a top 2 seed in the NEC tournament, but could they wrap up the #1 on Saturday? Let's find out by going to Brooklyn Heights, where the Terriers battled the Red Flash on Senior Day, a Senior Day Saturday. And remember, following the FDU win, a Terrier loss would give the Knights the regular season crown. Now, both offenses were struggling to find their rhythm early on. St. Francis, they're both St. Francis. So let's just say U and Brooklyn, just to differentiate. So U was looking to pull off the upset on the road. They were leading 21-16 at the break, and they stretched that lead to as many as 9 points in the 3rd quarter. But Brooklyn got hot late. They shot over 50% in each of the 3rd and 4th quarters. But to counter, U shot over 60% in the 4th quarter. So both teams were hitting their shots. And in the 4th quarter, it was like a blow-for-blow heavyweight title fight. After trailing for the majority of the game, the Terriers took the lead on an Allie Lassen 3-point play with 3:33 to go. Then, with U down 3 in the final seconds, Caitlin Maxwell with a pass to find Jada DePaul at the hoop for the lay-in to get U within 1 with 16 seconds to spare. After a Kalia Edwards free throw to make the margin 2, U had just one last chance. McLemore, trying to be glorious, couldn't hit. But Jada DePaul was there, hitting the offensive glass. She couldn't get the first putback, but she does get the second, tying the game up at 46, and we go to overtime. It was the 2nd straight game that weekend that SFU was going into overtime. In the bonus session, Brooklyn led 57-54. U was down. They had the basketball, 13 seconds left. Jada DePaul takes the 3. She did everything else in this game except tie the game with this 3. The final seconds ticked off the clock, and Brooklyn escaped with a 57-54 win. Allie Lassen, huge in this game for the Terriers, 17 points, 5 rebounds, a big block. Jada DePaul, she's taken it to another level for the Red Flash, finishing with 23 points, 18 rebounds, and 4 steals. Her 8th double-double of the season and her 4th in a row. She is averaging nearly 18 points and 17 rebounds over her last 4 games, and she currently stands top 5 in the nation in rebounds per game. With the comeback, the Terriers have now won 11 of their last 13 games, and they have clinched a top 2 seed, which will be their highest seeding in program history. They have never before been above a 3 seed, which they've done twice, and they stay alive in the race for the number 1 seed, preventing the Knights from clinching the crown, at least for now. Elsewhere this weekend, Merrimack's 10, Kate Major, became the 24th Merrimack Warrior to join the 1,000-point club with a 3-ball in the third quarters Thursday against FDU. Congratulations to Kate, who currently leads the Warriors in scoring and is top 5 in the league with 13.2 points per game. She's also currently tops in 3-point field goal percentage in the league, making triples at a near 46% clip, which would also be top 6 in the country. Also, shout out to both LIU and Sacred Heart, who wrapped up perfect 2-0 weekends. The Sharks have won 5 of their last 7, sweeping both SFU and Mount St. Mary's on their home court, and Sacred Heart ended a 7-game slide by sweeping Wagner and Merrimack. So let's check out the NEC standings and where they stand. The Knights will be a top 2 seed in the NEC tournament. They are 5-1 all-time in home playoff games at the Stratus Arena, and they've won 11 straight home conference games dating back to last year, 12 if you include their forfeit win against Mount St. Mary's. So that means, so with all that success, more playoff games will be coming their way. They will have at least a quarterfinal home playoff game, and if they win that, they will have a home semifinal playoff game. As we mentioned earlier, their magic number to clinch the regular season title, the number 1 seed, is just 1 game, meaning just 1 FDU win or 1 St. Francis Brooklyn loss the rest of the way would result in the Knights claiming the top spot for just the 2nd time in program history, with the other occasion coming all the way back in 1993. Now, St. Francis Brooklyn, they are still alive in the race for the number 1 seed. However, the only scenario left where they would be the number 1 seed is if they win out their last 3 games and at the same time FDU loses out their last 3 games. St. Francis Brooklyn is assured at least a top 2 seed. They will host the playoff game at the Daniel Lynch Gym for just the 2nd time in program history. And if they win that, they'll get another one. They'll get a semifinal game as well. Now, before everyone gets all up in arms and looks at the standings and says, hey, St. Francis Brooklyn had to forfeit 2 games back at the beginning of the year, and now they're 2 games back in the standings. See? Well, we don't talk about the forfeits the same way we don't talk about Bruno. But keep in mind, St. Francis Brooklyn's only 2 losses since the forfeits were both games against FDU. If St. Francis Brooklyn handled their own business and won those games, the standings would be tied and they'd have the head-to-head tiebreaker advantage. So nothing really to complain about here. FDU with the 2-game advantage, but it's the 2 games head-to-head against Brooklyn. That's the difference. Everything's going to play itself out on the court eventually anyway here over the last 3 games, and then, of course, in the NEC tournament. As for everything after that, numbers 3 through 10 in the standings, we could literally spend the next 20 minutes talking about this, but let's just say with 3 games to go, all we know for sure is nothing's for sure. For example, look at Sacred Heart. They're currently the number 7 seed at 6-9. They just endured a 7-game losing streak before snapping out of it this past weekend. All that considered, they're only 2 games out of 3rd place with 3 games to go. If the Pioneers keep winning, they could end up as high as the 3 or the 4 seed with a home game in the playoffs. Crazy 2 weeks ago when the Pioneers were down in the 8-9 game. Now to think on one more good weekend, they could be in line for a 3 or a 4 seed. That's how crazy, ridiculously close these standings are. At the moment, our current playoff matchups, if the season ended today, would have top-seeded FDU hosting either Bryant or Central Connecticut, 2nd-seeded St. Francis Brooklyn meeting Sacred Heart, Wagner up to the 3rd seed, they would take on LIU, and Mount St. Mary's is holding on to the 4 seed against number 5 St. Francis. Next week, it'll be time to head back into the laboratory and come back out with all the tiebreaker scenarios going into the final game of the regular season to see where all 9 of our tournament teams will be headed in the NEC tournament. We will have those tiebreaker scenarios for you right back here next week. Time now to crown our top 3 stars of the week for NEC week number 8. But before we do, we have to give a big time tip of the cap to Jada DePaul for an absolutely monster week. 16 points, 17 rebounds against LIU, and then 23 points, 18 rebounds against St. Francis Brooklyn. Insane stat lines. And as you saw earlier, she did everything she could to help her team win, except hit that last 3 at the end. However, her team didn't win. The Red Flash went 0-2 this weekend, and wins is one of our top criteria for the top 3 stars of the week, being a star and helping your team win. So special shout out to one of our former On the Run guests here, Jada DePaul. Amazing weekend, incredible individual outing, ridiculous stats, but unfortunately not enough to make it to our top 3 stars. So let's start with our number 3 star, and it's Allie Laston from St. Francis Brooklyn, who went head-to-head against DePaul on Saturday, but first on Thursday against the Mount. Laston came up clutch with some big-time plays, a pair of blocks in the 4th quarter while the Mount was on the comeback trail, and then the Point Pleasant, New Jersey native came up clutch again in the overtime win against St. Francis. Under 4 minutes to go, Laston blocked a shot that kept it a 2-point game and then tied things up with the 3-point play on the other end. She eventually completed the 3-point play to put the Terriers on top for the first time in a long time and finished that game with a team-high 17 points. She's averaging 13.2 points since the calendar turned to February. Allie Laston making a bunch of clutch game-winning plays to earn the number 3 star of the week. Our number 2 star is Brandy Thomas from the LIU Sharks. The Sharks are on their 2nd win streak in conference play this year. They've won 5 of their last 7 overall, and they swept SFU and Mount St. Mary's at home this past weekend, and Brandy Thomas was a big reason why. In the overtime against SFU, she scored the first 5 points, a 3-pointer in transition and free throws from the stripe. She led all scorers in that game with 19. And then in her final regular season game at the Steinberg Wellness Center, Thomas made a layup in the 3rd quarter that helped spark the key 12-0 run that the Sharks used to put the game out of reach. Thomas had 8 of the 12 points in that run. She finished with 12 points and 5 rebounds in the game, and she finishes our number 2 star of the week. Our number 1 star for week 8 is Anaya Bell for Fairleigh Dickinson. In 5 games in the month of February, Bell is averaging 15.2 points and shooting over 40%, both from the field and from 3. We talked about some of the most improved players in the league last week here on the show. Merrimack's Tanisha Brown had the highest year-to-year scoring jump. Well, Bell's situation isn't true year-to-year because she had the opt-out year last year. But if you go back 2 years to her freshman campaign, she's at a 5-point increase in scoring from her previous season and climbing. She poured in 17 against Merrimack, 18 on Saturday against Bryant, was our player of the game on ESPN+. And talking to her afterwards, she talked about her opt-out year last year and how Coach Ange was still coaching her when she was home, telling her to stay in the gym, work on the defense, work on her shot, be more versatile. That work and that coaching definitely paying off this year. Anaya Bell, our number 1 NEC Star of the Week. Saturday afternoon, 4 p.m. on ESPN3, the Sacred Heart Pioneers will be traveling up to Loretto, Pennsylvania to match up with the St. Francis Red Flash. And joining me this week here on NEC Women's Basketball on the Run, one of the players who will be involved in that game, Sacred Heart junior guard Sonia Smith. Sonia, thanks so much for joining us here today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Now, first question, when you're on these long bus rides up to places like, Mount St. Mary's and St. Francis, how do you spend the time on the bus? Do you take naps? Do you watch movies? Do you catch up on schoolwork? How do you pass the time?
Literally all of it. From time to time, I'm on my phone, but I try to do my schoolwork because we're on the road, of course. Can't forget about school, but I try to do my schoolwork. But, I got to get my shows in, my movies.
There you go. Now, what have you enjoyed most about your time so far playing with Sacred Heart over the last couple of years?
Oh, what I've enjoyed the most, about my teammates. It's always a good time around them. It's always a good time with them. Like bus rides, it's never a dull moment. Like when I'm talking to a teammate, it's always a laugh. Like definitely my teammates.
During your time with the Pioneers so far, is there one game that maybe you could point back to or stands out that it's like, wow, I was in the zone that day. I was feeling it that day.
Oh, definitely LIU Brooklyn at LIU Brooklyn my freshman year. We lost when we lost off that buzzer beater to them.
Okay, that's right.
Definitely that game. Yeah.
Now, here in the present day, the team was coming off a rough month or so that started the last time you played Mount St. Mary's in SFU, but you finally broke out of it with a couple of big wins this past weekend. What were some of the things that the team was kind of working their way through, and how did you push through all of it to get to the positive results this past weekend?
So a lot of it may seem to be physical, like we have to do this, we have to do that, but I feel like my team, me and my team's like main thing we had to break through was our mental. Like we said we wanted to do this, we said we wanted to do that, but to execute it, to really want to do it, that was really the change in our production. So like we finally like something just clicked with us. Like we finally like made our minds up to do it. Like we're tired of just saying to do things. So like we took a big step. We took a big part in doing the scout. Like we looked at the team's previous games ourselves, like identified a lot of things together as a team. Like it helps a lot when we could scout the team we're about to play like as a team, and we're interacting with each other, talking to each other about, oh, this girl does this, they run this, they do that to get this. And so we locked in way more mentally.
I would assume that would be a positive sign, especially this time of year, only, a week before March or so, the tournament's right around the corner. So that has to, have things feeling good in the locker room right now with your team.
For sure, yeah. And that was another thing we had to get through mentally. Of course, we lost several games in a row. Nobody's going to like that. So, like, mentally, we have to stay positive. We have to stay optimistic. We have to stay up. So, we have to get ourselves out that mental rut first and foremost.
Coming up this weekend, you have Mount St. Mary's, and then St. Francis is the game that we're going to see on ESPN3 on Saturday. Now, your current assistant coach used to be their head coach, and we're talking about Coach Haig. How has he fit in, and how has he helped you individually this year during the time that he's been with Sacred Heart?
Coach Haig is great, and he's not just a great coach. He's a great man. Period. Like we have those hard coaches, when there's a moment where you have to yell, you have to be the hard coach, but we always have Coach Haig to fall back on. He's there to like talk to us, be reasonable, be the one to like comfort us and tell us like it'll be okay. He'll make a joke here and there. Like he just makes you feel better about everything. So like he's just a really great coach as well. And of course he used to coach out at San Francisco, PA. So he's a big part of the scout. Like he knows a lot that they do. He knows the type of players that they have and recruit. So he's a big key in our success in this game.
Now, the last time you played, in fact, the last three times you've played them, it's gone to overtime. What is it about the styles, the way that these two teams match up and play that has the end result with these games being so tight?
Well, that's a great question. It's funny because last year I didn't play against them. I was out hurt, so I got to literally sit back and watch. But I don't know, they're great shooters, and we're great attackers. So I feel like we match each other, and we can shoot, but I feel like we're better in our offense, like attacking, getting the open kickouts, or getting our posts open, and they get really great shot opportunities. They're good defensive team, translates to offense. So I don't know. It is always a really close game with us. So
And it makes it fun for us to watch. I don't know how about playing, but it makes it fun for us to watch. That's for sure. And we look forward to seeing it coming up on Saturday. But before we let you go, Sonia, we have a get to know. We have 5 quick hitters to throw at you, and just give us the first thing that comes to mind. Okay.
okay.
All right. What is your favorite show to binge right now?
Right now, I would have to say, I don't know, grownish, I guess.
Okay. What is something that you just can't live without?
This is gonna sound very cliche, but basketball.
Love it. Love it. What is a pregame superstition that you have?
um, superstition. I don't know. Pregame superstition. I need a pregame nap.
Okay.
Need a pregame nap.
If we took a survey of all your teammates, what is the trait or the adjective that you think they would use to describe you?
Um, uh, that's a great question. It's a lot of things popping up into my head. Playful, I guess. I'm never serious with them.
Okay. And finally, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever gotten? Could be basketball, could be life. What is the best piece of advice you've ever gotten?
Um, that's the advice I received. Um, when someone says you can't do, I feel like a lot of people get discouraged when somebody tells them you can't do this or don't do that. Like even if it's from a coach, a mentor, like don't ever limit yourself. I would say like that's just a bad like somebody else can say something to you, but don't let that affect how you feel about yourself and what you know you can do because you can always push yourself to do what you know you can. So
That's awesome. Awesome lesson. Thank you so much, Sonia, for sharing. And thank you so much for joining us here this week. And we'll see the Pioneers in Loretto taking on St. Francis Saturday. Best of luck to you this weekend and best of luck the rest of the season.
thank you. Thank you for having me today.
All right, that's Sonia Smith, this week's guest here on NEC Women's Basketball on the Run. It's time for Stats Amazing, and today we're talking points. The end of February is huge. Teams grind it out in non-conference and regular season basketball for weeks and months on end just to get here to this stage, having your team in sync, rolling on all cylinders, and getting ready to go into the conference tournament. So we wanted to know who are the top scorers in the league right now, putting up the top performance when it matters most to lead their teams into March. Let's find out. Here are the top 5 scorers in the NEC just in the month of February. Only games in February included. The results may be surprising. Here we go. Our number 5 scorer in the month of February is SFU's Jada DePauw. We talked about her Monster Week Player of the Week in the league each of the last 2 weeks, averaging 15 points so far in February. Number 4 is FDU's Anaya Bell, averaging 15.2 points in 5 February games for the Knights. Number 3 on the list, LIU's Brandy Thomas, averaging 15.6 points in 5 February games. And at the top, we have a tie for number 1, both Wagner's Amelia Christagrava and our guest on today's show, Sacred Heart's Sonia Smith, both leading the league in February, averaging 16 points per game. EKG, she did it in 5 February games, and Smith did it in 6. Wagner and Sacred Heart are both in the thick of the fight for seeds 3 through 8 in the NEC standings with 3 games to go, and EKG and Smith are certainly doing their part to try and help their teams finish as high as possible. Amelia Christagrava, Sonia Smith are NEC leading scorers in the month of February. Stats amazing. Time to check what's coming up on tap this weekend. It's the final weekend of February and the final 2-game weekend of the conference year. On Thursday night, the race for the regular season title will be in the spotlight as FDU visits Wagner. And at the same time, St. Francis Brooklyn will be hitting the road to visit Bryant. Both games starting at 7 p.m. Now, we talked with Coach Anja Fairley Dickinson about the regular season title this past weekend. And while she admitted it would be a significant milestone and achievement for her team, she was very much in the, I can't think about the future, one game at a time coach mode. Well, now, Coach Ange, it's not the future anymore. The moment is very much here. In essence, Thursday's game is a championship game for Fairleigh Dickinson. Win it at Wagner, and they are the regular season champions. Of course, they could also wrap it up if the Terriers fall at Bryant. Also, in this game, look out for Madison Stanley. We talked how over the last couple of weeks how she's been making a run as a Player of the Year candidate, perhaps the favorite after 3 straight Player of the Week honors midseason. But in her last 3 games, she's only averaging 5.7 points, 5.3 rebounds, and she's shooting 23%. So in my estimation, she probably needs one more big game or one more big moment to really cement that Player of the Year honor 100% for sure. And there's no better place to do it than in a championship game against the Seahawks. Stanley only scored 4 points in 15 minutes the last time she played Wagner back in mid-January. Now, at the same time that Stanley's numbers have gone down a little bit, Jada DePauw's numbers have gone up. Monster numbers over the last few weeks, as we've talked about earlier. So perhaps the door is left ajar, maybe, for Jada DePauw to step in and make a late run towards the Player of the Year honor. And we will see Jada DePauw on Saturday, an always entertaining matchup when the St. Francis Red Flash take on the Sacred Heart Pioneers, 4 p.m., ESPN 3. Myself and former Sacred Heart Pioneer Tykira Carter will be on the call. Now, we'll have a former Pioneer in the booth. We'll have a former Red Flash championship winning head coach on the Pioneers bench, as we talked about with Sonia Smith earlier. Joe Haig returns to the DeGaulle Arena, but this time from the visiting locker room. Haig spent over a decade in Loretto, 7 seasons as the head coach, winning the Red Flash's record 12th tournament title back in 2018 before departing midway through the 2019 season. Now, I remember speaking with Coach Haig during our NEC Front Row Live post-game show in 2018 as his team was cutting down the nets. He was with his son. I asked him how special it was to complete the journey with his family and the SFU family, and he definitely got emotional talking about how St. Francis was a special place, and you can see it, you can hear it. It definitely meant a lot. So I'm sure that it will be an emotional journey for Coach Haig in his big return to Western Pennsylvania coming up on Saturday. But as far as on the court stuff goes, 3 straight times these two teams have met. They've extended the action into overtime. St. Francis just played back-to-back overtime games this past weekend. Can the Red Flash and Pioneers make it 4 in a row in this series to go into bonus basketball? We will see. Sonia Smith looks to continue her role, while the Pioneers will have to contend with the force that is Jada DePauw. You can't really stop her. You can only hope to contain her. It's a big game in the standings. Again, both teams will be positioning. They're still in the running for home playoff games. St. Francis only 1 game ahead of Sacred Heart at the moment. That win 69-66 in overtime, their previous meeting in Connecticut back on January 23rd, right now looms as the difference. That'll do it for this week. I'm Craig D'Amico, and we will see you right back here, as always, next week for all the tiebreakers you could possibly handle. A preview of the regular season finale. The regular season wraps up on Thursday, March the 3rd, immediately followed by the opening round game of the NEC tournament about 48 hours later on Saturday, March the 5th. We'll see you right back here next week for another brand new edition of NEC Women's Basketball on the Run.